All right.
You'll owe me.
Sweet baby Jesus, take the wheel.
Okay. We're gonna call to order Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. What day is it? November 18th, 2024. Joel, can you lead us in
We're
that?
gonna do
A roll call first? Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Erickson,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Gibson,
Here.
Vice Chair Howard,
Here.
Chair Taylor.
Here.
All right.
Okay, now, Joel, would you like to lead us in the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Are you still able to see it?
Yeah. Okay, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda?
No.
Donna? No? Okay. All right. Are we going right into? Okay, so I need to know from commissioners if we have any conflict of interest or,
No. Nope. None.
okay.
Wait for
Sean?
Nope.
Thank you. We need approval of our planning and zoning meeting minutes from November 4. Do I have a motion?
I motion that we approve the minutes from the meeting of November 4th, 2024.
Second?
Okay. Motion and second.
And David, was that you? That seconded?
It's kind of like David, it's more
No.
like Keith.
It was Keith. All right, perfect. I just heard a voice. All right, Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Howard,
Yes.
Chair Taylor.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So we're gonna go right into our public hearing. And I go here first. Okay. We request that everyone silence their cell phones. This is an open public hearing, and it is for PZE-24-0014 Northwind Subdivision Preliminary Plat.
Go ahead, do this one.
Okay, I need to know, has anyone had any ex parte communication with the applicant or general public regarding this case?
No.
No. Nope.
Nope.
Thank you, nor have I. Okay. Are you going? No, it says applicant here, but. We going, Donna, you're there. How about we hear from you first?
I did want to let everybody know that Zach is our attorney for the city. Attorney Fonda is actually out of the country. So Zach's filling in, and he's participating remotely because he had another meeting that butted right up against this one, and there's not enough lag time and commute to make that happen. So he will be interjecting potentially or available for questions if you have any. Can't see him now, but
Well, we did
He's
see
in
him
there.
earlier. We know he's
Yeah.
there. Thank you.
So tonight we're here to, for a public hearing for Northwinds, which is a phased subdivision. It's PZE 24-0014. So just as a matter of location, it's south of Hayden Avenue, and it is east of North Hutter. It's that piece of property that's directly south of the substation that you see, not in the city limits, located at this location. Ray Kimball from Whipple Consulting Engineers is here, and the owners are Hutter Homes. I think they're in the audience too. So just a request and some background information. This is a multi-phased major subdivision on 39.09 acres. They're requesting 88 single-family residential R1 lots. They do have an annexation agreement that has kind of some information they need to abide by. And they're proposing lot sizes meet the minimums and far exceed in some cases, the minimum of 8250 for a single-family residential. That lot that you see here is not a buildable lot today. It's an area reserved for the Hutter bypass and is about 8.66 acres. And there's no individual accesses to Robeson, Honeysuckle, or Hutter. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ray.
Thank you, Donna. Good evening, Commissioners. Ray Kimball of Whipple Consulting Engineers for the record. As you all know, I'm a licensed civil engineer here in the state of Idaho, as well as a land surveyor here in the state of Idaho. And I'm here on behalf of the owners presenting Northwind subdivision. So I'll get right into it. So as Donna mentioned, this is the project location. It is on Hutter Road. And the project zoning is single-family residential. This single-family residential was annexed, I think, in 2014, somewhere in there. And it came with a zoning, a maximum density of 4 units per acre as part of the annexation agreement, and was zoned all single-family residential. And of course, and maybe Donna counted differently than me, I think we have 88 total lots, 87 residential, maybe it's 88 residential. But we are at 40 total acres. And we have that large phase 4, 1 lot. You can see here that the first phase is a little bit different than the one that was in your packet. Honeysuckle, bean, harvest, whatever we want to call it, I think they're all the same street if you line them all up. Is going to be in the first phase. And so it's really important that we have our access onto Hutter, our first access, and that goes with the first phase. So we're at 2.15 units per acre. Hayden Lake Irrigation District is the water purveyor, city of Hayden, and Harbs are the sewer purveyors. And so as you can see at 2.15, we are well below the 4.0 units per acre allowed in the annexation agreement. Residential lot area varies from, smallest is 8812, and the largest is a little over 19,000 square feet, and the average being just over 10,500. So these are what we kind of call the larger lots, probably the 3-car garage type lots that we'd see, not the typical 2-car garage lots. Jumping into it, here is the open spaces, what the open space in the area looks like. So this kind of gives you a little bit of a peek of the area. Just to the east, this right here is the Battleground subdivision that you saw about a month ago. And this is kind of how this all fits part and parcel, hand in glove, together with the surrounding area. So we have Downing Street. So this is Madison Ranch subdivision, which is approved. So we have Downing Street, which comes down here. We have this 12-acre community park, which is planned for the Battleground subdivision. And you can see in these little green belts right here, these are green belts with pathways that lead to the park. So it's very important to keep that connectivity, the pedestrian connectivity, and provide that from the neighborhoods. Of course, all the streets will have sidewalks on them, so the sidewalks will end at the north end here with block end buffers, and then pathways all the way to the park. Same way here, same thing here, pathways all the way up here to the park. Also, it's important to note that this property right down here, this 40 acres, is owned by the school district, and they have plans for a school there sometime in the future, maybe 2 schools. They don't know exactly what. With their enrollment fluctuations being what they are, they're not sure exactly what their needs are for that spot. The proposed streetscape. So this is what our proposed streetscape is going to look like. And so the typical subdivision, we have a pathway here on one side, on a block end buffer with a swale in between. All the single family lots will have swales right on the side, driveways, really typical single-family subdivision in the city of Hayden, very similar to what you see pretty much everywhere else in the newer subdivisions here in Hayden. With regards to proximity to the airport, we are right here in this blue zone. This is traffic pattern zone 6. And as you can see here in really fuzzy language or text here, it says allow residential use in traffic pattern 6. So we're in that zone 6 that allows residential use within the Coeur d'Alene Airport Master Plan. Jumping into the standards of approval, which are really the nuts and bolts and the guts of our discussion here tonight. We need to make sure that infrastructure constructed in a way that promotes public health, safety, and welfare. So our response to that is very simple. All constructed infrastructure will meet jurisdictional standards. We are providing pathways and sidewalks for pedestrians. Streets will be constructed to meet traffic needs internally. Off-site traffic improvements will help mitigate crash frequency and will improve traffic flow. All of those things promote public health, safety, and welfare in the city of Hayden.
So can I ask, then when we're outside of the subdivision, because we're inviting lots of cars
Right?
when we build a subdivision of this size. So what kind of provisions are there for outside the immediate subdivision?
I'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay, I'll let you.
So we want to make sure that infrastructure can be, one of the standards is infrastructure can be constructed and located in an orderly manner that accommodates ongoing maintenance when taking into consideration co-location of other infrastructure. Okay, so we expect infrastructure and construction to start on the south side where the proposed lift station is going to be, and it will progress in accordance with the phasing plan, which moves north. And the construction will expand the city's transportation network in conformance with the adopted transportation master plan. That's one of those really important items here, in ensuring that as we are building subdivisions, that we're expanding the city's transportation infrastructure so that it can and does handle. So building new roads on the grid in conformance with the city's transportation master plan helps distribute traffic, and that's a really important thing. And of course, we've provided adequate space in the construction plans for all the other utilities, water, sewer, dry utilities, et cetera. So infrastructure needs to be in compliance with the state, city, and federal regulations. Of course, that typically means DEQ, Northern Lakes Fire District, and the Water District. Hayden Lake Irrigation District has provided a will serve letter. You saw an update to that came in today, or you will see an update to that that came in today, because it was the one that had in there it was when we submitted the application. Water plans and fire hydrant spacing are subject to review and approval by the Hayden Lake Irrigation District, the Northern Lakes, as well as DEQ. And so that will ensure that all of those standards are met. We will also meet any other standards out there, but those are typically those are the agencies that we see when we typically do any sort of construction plans. Infrastructure, so provisions have to be made for public sewer in accordance with HARBs and sewer master plans. So as you all know, this is in the H8 basin. This is a sewer basin that does not have really any service right now. And so this landowner is one of 5 landowners who have come together to co-fund the construction of the H8 lift station and the force main, which will go all the way to the wastewater treatment plant. And this consortium also includes the Coeur d'Alene School District. Coeur d'Alene School District will be providing the site. That's their only contribution. They're providing the site and potential easements in and out for sewer mains. And all the other landowners have formed an LLC and have funded an LLC for the design and construction of that lift station And it's really kind of a form of a private LID, if you will. So years and years and years ago, probably 10 years ago, the city came to the landowners and said, hey, we're thinking about putting out an LID to put this lift station in. And the landowners said, no, we don't want to do that. And now they're doing it themselves. So it's one of the rare times that developer landowners have come together, at least rare times in my career, so my 25-year career, that landowners have come together to build this kind of an infrastructure. Usually what happens is one developer just waiting for the next guy to build it. And they just wait and they wait and they wait and they wait and they wait. And then the first guy finally cries uncle, and they build it, and then everyone else jumps on the coattails. In this case, everyone is getting together, and it's really for the benefit of all. And a big beneficiary here is also the school district, because they actually have the land right now that doesn't have any sewer service, and they will get sewer service for really just the cost of a 200 by 200 piece of property on their 40-acre parcel. So it's a really big deal. And of course, because it will be the school district providing the land, the school district will provide the land directly to the city. That way it will not go through private hands, and that's a very important legal logistical thing that has to happen, because entity to entity is, public entity to public entity is a very easy transfer for the school district to do. Public entity to private entity means it has to go into an auction. So that's why it'll go from public to public. It's a really important thing, and they've agreed to do that. And so we are often moving on the sewer design right now.
What's your timeline on that?
As soon as we can. We'd love to start building that thing next year. The timeline is to get plans approved and out to bid in the spring. We'd love to have that thing up and going as soon as possible. If we could be building it this winter, we would be. So we've got all the approval hoops to jump through, and that's what we're doing. And so as soon as we move through those, we'll start construction. So this is the approximate location of the lift station here. And so what you do is here is a little bit of a sneak peek of kind of how we see this area, the road networks and whatnot developing. So we have down here a subdivision application that is into the city and will be before you in the future. This area right here is a conceptual layout that we put together for the southern 40 acres that this client, Big Hutter Homes, owns. And so, but more importantly, what it does is it shows that we're providing routes for sewer to get to this lift station location. And so, moving on, one of the we have to make provisions for snow storage to satisfy Public Works. So as you will notice in our subdivision layout, we did not do any knuckles and cul-de-sacs. Those are the things that the snowplow drivers hate. And so we have instead done radiused intersections instead of doing knuckles. And that allows for snow storage in the swales, just like every other street, just like a straight shot of street. So the snow plows drive down the road, wing it right off to the edges, just like they normally would. And there's no ocean of asphalt for them to stop and have to plow into those snow storage areas or do the berms in the center of the cul-de-sacs. So that was something that we came up with the city engineer, and a good solution that's going to work for everyone, we think. So snow storage will be in the swales, where all the stormwater goes. So we have to make sure that we follow DEQ and city requirements with regards to stormwater. This is really important for aquifer protection. So we have a lot of best management practices for stormwater here over the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer. Typically, it means all the stormwater impervious surfaces that are polluted, so streets, driveways, etc., all the stormwater is directed into grassy swales where biological treatment occurs and filters out the, basically the oils and the dirt and the pollutants and whatnot that are all on our streets. And then discharge happens into dry wells, which actually recharges the aquifer after that. So, we have to make provisions for streets that are consistent with the adopted transportation master plan. Got to satisfy the city, ITD, highway districts, et cetera. So all of our street standards will meet the transportation master plan. All the streets internal meet the requirements of the transportation master plan. There are no cul-de-sacs. We've set aside area for the Hutter bypass, very, very important for regional.
Can I ask about that?
You can.
So you've set that space aside. What does that, let's say Hutter bypass does go through there. How much space between someone's back fence and the road?
I don't know, and that because the design isn't done.
Okay,
That'll be a big part of this. So the Hutter bypass design is completely up in the air. They asked that we provide this corridor, and so, and if you can put in your mind's eye Hutter Road south of Prairie Avenue, and the landings is right there. They built right all the way up, right up to Hutter.
right,
And so instead of ITD having to buy all those houses, they'll be shifting the alignment. In this case, we're keeping them from having to buy all those houses, and we're just reserving that area. So in the long term, there's a giant benefit to the public because there's a corridor that the state is going to have to purchase with tax dollars that is being held back. They'll still have to purchase it, but they're not going to be purchasing homes,
right.
which is an important thing. But to answer your question, I really don't know.
Okay. Thank you, though.
Who determined the size of that corridor?
That was based, my understanding is that was based on the KMPO study, and their planning, and that was determined at the time of annexation. And so they needed a particular width, and they had a rough route, and so that's what they asked for. And of course, provisions also have been made for extensions to streets on the neighboring properties. This right here is a good visual indicator of what we're doing and how we are meeting the transportation master plan. So this is a snip right out of the current transportation master plan. You will notice here that this dashed line is Hutter. So it's a Hutter bypass. And you will see here that, and this is honeysuckle, harvest, bean, whatever you want to call it, that runs all the way through. You will see that it crosses all the way through. Hayden Avenue crosses all the way through. Prairie Avenue crosses all the way through. You will see here that Robeson stops short, and Cranston also stops short. And that is because there's no planned overpass or interchange for those two streets. It's our understanding that the planning mechanisms in place at this point in time plan for an overpass or an underpass of some sort at Harvest Bean right here. So we are making sure that there is a connection point for us all the way out. You will see that we essentially mirror the entire master plan all the way through here. This street right here is Downing, this north-south street. We even got the Wiggles in it. And you will see here that, of course, we've got, well, this street isn't really part of this one. But we have Robeson that goes here and it stops, and instead of just dead ending, we turn it and we go south and turn it right into the neighborhood, which is a really important thing for, it's not really, Robeson isn't there necessarily in this part of the city to get people through, it's to get people out or in. So What this does is, as you can see, is that this produces a very important part of the transportation network in this part of the city. So now, with regards to transportation infrastructure, I'm going to just kind of jump into a couple of things here. So at this intersection, currently with Hutter and Harvest, we expect to put in a left turn bay, both northbound and southbound. We'll widen it on our side so that there'll be room for that left turn bay. It's really important. Hutter is 45 miles an hour in that location. It's just a safety thing. We plan on putting that in. We do have a traffic impact analysis that has been into the city. The city's consultant has commented on it. Most of the comments are what I would consider to be benign, and not really substantive to the recommendations, meaning basically they're not really going to change the recommendations. So as many of you know, the city of Hayden is a traffic impact fee city, meaning that it's essentially understood that mitigation for a single-family house is going to be paid for via traffic impact fees. Now, there are methods and ways for us to, so that happens, as you know, that happens for the public here. Traffic impact fees happen at building permit. They don't happen before the subdivision is built. They happen when the building permit is issued. And so those are collected building permit upon building permit, and then they're collected over a certain amount of time, and then the city puts together, hires a consultant, the consultant drafts the plans go out to bid, infrastructure gets built. So those are for things like roundabouts and traffic signals and generally intersection improvements and sometimes widening projects, but not usually. So we have the opportunity here. So this, the traffic impact analysis has identified some intersections. As of course, I'm pretty sure everyone here probably knows the intersection of Hayden and Hutter is currently operating at a level of service of F during the peak hours, which is a failing. As you probably also know, impact fees are not supposed to necessarily go towards fixing existing problems, but fixing your share of what you expect to impact. So if it's already failing, it's not necessarily our job or this developer's job to fix that, but we have the ability. And so we have the ability to work with the city and with the city staff to utilize the impact fees that we would expect to have for this. So let's just say, and I think the impact fee is right around $1,400, I think, for a typical single-family home in the city of Hayden. That could be, it's in there, $1,400 or $1,500 right in there. And so we have the ability to work with city staff to come up with some creative solutions to fix not only some of these existing problems, but some of the problems that might or that are likely to happen in the future, 10 or 15 years in the future. We have the ability to work towards fixing those, and we can do that by utilizing impact fee dollars, by essentially saying, all right, hey, we expect to pay a certain number of dollars, and let's just say, I think $228,000 or $230,000 or whatever it ends up, 87 lots times the traffic impact fee. We have that amount to put towards some infrastructure where we can work with city staff, we can get creative, we can work with other developers in the area that have similar issues, and we'll be putting traffic on the same streets that we're going to be. And we have the ability to utilize those dollars, and it's not necessarily something that is, it's not something that's mandated per se, but it's really helpful for us to be able to get out in front. So it's an upfront cost that normally we wouldn't be paying. It would be paid on the building permit end. So the developer ends up paying it and then typically discounting the lot by that, or increasing the fee of the lot, the cost of the lot by that much. But what it does is that the big benefit is, one, the developer designs and builds it, and typically the land development, private sector can build infrastructure like that for about 65 to 70 cents on the dollar, based on what public entities do. And there's just a lot more hoops public entities have to jump through, that we don't necessarily have to do. And so we've gotten what we consider to be a pot of money that we can throw at this. And of course, the plan is to just be fair. And so pay no more than our fair share. And that's pretty easy to figure out because we have impact fees. So the big difference is that instead of paying them later at building permit, it's essentially prepaying them and building the infrastructure ahead of time, which gets in front of it, and will be a big benefit to the citizens of Hayden today as well as in the future. Going on to making provisions for parks and open space, you can see here, and I've talked about it already, we have the block end buffers that lead directly towards the park and to the pathway systems that take us to and from the park. So parks plan compliance, you can see here, this is a snip straight out of the parks plan. We have right here, this is, here's that regional park, or community park, excuse me. And this is honeysuckle bean harvest. And so we have a pathway corridor through here. We have one up and down Carrington. And as you can see, as we plant these subdivisions in here, that we are following exactly there. So meets the parks master plan, both in text and on the map. So we have to make provisions to make sure erosion control measures are in place during construction and there's no geohazards. Prairie doesn't typically have any geohazards out there. And we'll make sure that there's an erosion control plan in place, generally for dust control for the most part during construction. We got to make provisions for gas, power, and telecommunications. We're going to have a gas, power, and telecommunications in the dry utility ditch. It's available for all of them. We expect Vista to be supplying the power and gas, and telecommunications will be whoever wants to get in the ditch. So there's a whole bunch of fiber companies out there that typically clamor for that. So we've made provision for them. And of course, we've got to make provisions for driveway locations, and we've done that as shown in our preliminary construction plans that we've submitted. We're very intentional on where we put our driveways and the width of the driveways and making sure that they're not in locations that cause conflicts with utility boxes, water boxes, etc. And there's no driveway access from Honeysuckle, Bean, or Harvest, which is the same street. Also won't be any driveway access from Robeson, but that's a block end, so I thought that kind of spoke for itself. So we have to make sure that we meet all the components of the zoning ordinance. And so we meet the density and performance standards found within the zoning ordinance for the R1 zone. And we have to make sure that the community will bear no more than its fair share of the cost provided by paying fees, off-site impacts to streets, parks, etc. And I spoke about that ad nauseum with regard to the traffic impact fees. There will also be park impact fees that will be paid at the time of building permit. So the park, that community park next door is going to be partially built, meaning it's going to be green, it's going to be irrigated, and it's going to have some features and some amenities, but not all of the amenities that that community park is planned to have when it gets constructed. And so an important part of this and an important part of the subdivisions that will be happening around there will be to collect impact fees so that they can build amenities in that park. So that's a really important part of this. So the park impact fees and park impact will be mitigated by those fees, and those hopefully will go directly towards putting features in that park that will benefit the residents.
When you say partially built, Like, will part of it be dirt or everything will be
It'll,
lawn?
it'll all be lawn, it'll be irrigated, it'll all be green.
Got it.
It'll be green, it'll be irrigated. So that's part of the deferred development agreement that the other,
Yeah.
that the prior subdivision, or the Battleground subdivision has in place with the city. They have a certain budget for all of those things. They have an obligation and anything, and a budget, and the budget has to cover all their obligations. If they're over budget, they still have to do all their obligations. If they're under budget, there's a list of things, amenities that they can pop in there, to, for park things.
Yeah, so there won't be any hazards per se. It'll be usable.
Right, it'll be graded, it'll be irrigated, it'll be mowed.
Okay.
It'll be green. Yep. So we have no requested modifications to the conditions of approval. I'll be happy to answer any additional questions that I haven't answered already.
Oh, I've got one. So you guys have provided, I think you said 8 acres for the Hutter bypass. Are the lots north and south of this development gonna do the same thing?
So I'm gonna jump to this slide right here. So the annexation agreement for both this property and this property, and I believe this one here, call for reservation of that width. And so that's why you see this line right there. And I'm assuming that line continues through this property, goes around the builder supply. And as you can see here on the Kootenai Electric side, it's really hard to see, but all of their infrastructure is right here, and this is just trees and a driveway. So, and actually one of the things that's important to note is that we did extend Robeson here, and it touches that Kootenai Electric property, so that when the Hutter bypass goes in, they got a short driveway to pop right into their substation. So that was another thing that we made sure we did, is provide them the ability to get to their property after the Hutter bypass goes in. So,
Cool. All right, thank you.
yeah. All
Any
right.
other questions for the applicant?
Anything?
Okay.
Perfect. I'll reserve any time I have or need for rebuttal, and we also have our attorney here, if necessary, for any legal questions that come up.
I do have one question. The development, will the construction coincide at the same time, hypothetically, as Battleground and everything else, or are there certain phases that take precedence, or certain divisions that take
So
precedence?
that's a great question. The answer is, I have no
Depends on
guarantee.
approvals?
Well, yes, obviously it depends on approvals. But all the developers that are, or the landowners here that are contributing to this lift station want the ability to use it. And so, as you probably saw, Battleground, their first phase, in their phasing plan was down here, which for the purposes of connectivity, so let's say the lift station goes in and they build their first phase, and Northwinds builds their first phase, which is also in this area, that will connect all the way out, and it'll connect out to there. So it'll provide 2 points of exit, for the subdivision as well as, for the Battleground. So it's really kind of important, well, it's not really important, but it's convenient, if you will, that they'll be constructed together. That was one of the benefits of coming together and funding the lift station together, is that it put the impetus, on developing in the immediate vicinity of that lift station. So the transportation elements just follow suit. It actually follows pretty nicely.
I appreciate that the consortium has come together to build that lift station and other things your use of impact fees and whatnot in order to pay your fair share
It,
of public infrastructure. But we all know that nothing can happen until that lift station is built and approved.
right, yeah, that's a really important, so our plan is, you know, for all the developers here is, but this one in particular, is to build our first phase at the same time that lift station is being built. So the goal is to be ready, so that as soon as that lift station is online, we can use it. And so we'll have all the sewer infrastructure upstream, roads and water and all that stuff in, and same with the neighboring property. So it's all a timing thing, and it's all, at this point, so far, the timing is lining up nicely.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a look-see at the comparison between the existing zone and the future land use map. The existing zone is single-family residential. The future land use map shows this as being mixed residential and mixed use. They have not asked for a zone map amendment. They're remaining in the single-family residential. So we're gonna cruise through the staff review in summary, like we do generally speaking. Standards of approval, there are 8 standards of approval for a subdivision. The first 2 talk about promoting public health, safety, and welfare, and the second one talks about locating the infrastructure in an orderly manner that accommodates ongoing maintenance needs and co-location. And those are kind of addressed throughout the staff review, so you see that. Number 3, the third standard of approval has several parts. The first part is that the water requirements, it addresses the standards for water requirements. There was a conditional will serve letter that was provided in your packets, in your staff review. And one of the things that we do is that I always go through when I'm writing the final bits of the staff review and getting ready for this public hearing. If you were to look at your staff review that's in your packets, it identifies that the will serve is good until July 11th of 2024, which last time I checked came and went. So one of the requests was that Hayden Lake Irrigation District provide an updated will serve that was current. All right, maybe printed yet. Hold that thought.
I know where to find it.
There you go. That came in late this afternoon. So the will serve identifies the fact that Hayden Lake Irrigation District will serve the property water. Then the other entity that we always look for is Northern Lakes Fire Protection District's comments for the subdivision construction related to building construction, access points, and response times. That was received on October 18th as part of the agency notice responses. I did want to comment on that, but I'll do that under agency notices. The city provided a will serve letter on March 22nd of 2024, and it identified that this project is located wholly within the H8 basin, which is not yet built or constructed. I think that Mr. Kimball did a really good job explaining all of that as far as the H8 basin. It needs to have a lift station, needs to have gravity lines to the lift station, and needs to have a dedicated pressure line out to the treatment plant. In other words, you can't have a building permit, a house permit, anything that would flow sewer until that infrastructure is complete and accepted. Stormwater and snow storage are always reviewed at the time of subdivision construction plan review. And as he already alluded to, they're using the typical sections for the streets that has the pavement, the curbs, the swales, and the sidewalks. The swales are built to address the stormwater that's required for that subdivision pavement section and the impervious surfaces, as well as for snow storage. In fact, that's what the easement calls out. So street requirements. Generally, we don't line up subdivisions on a subdivision preliminary plat map, but you have seen all of these subdivisions come before you as a hearing body. Madison Ranch has been an approved subdivision and has received preliminary plat approval and are in review of construction plans. Battleground was recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. City Council heard them at a public meeting and tabled their deliberations until the first meeting in December. So it hasn't been approved yet, or hasn't been approved at this point. But lining up the North Winds subdivision, you can see how the road network is interconnected. I did want to bring out a couple of points that were identified in the staff analysis. Related to the annexation agreement. So if you have your staff reviews open on your tablets, if you scroll all the way to the back end of your staff review, it's like, I want to say 1, 2, 3 pages, 4 pages in from the very back, the very last page. And it's the Bluegrass annexation agreement that was approved in 2013. You're pretty close. And it has to do with Robeson Avenue specifically. 6.5 of the annexation agreement on that page says the rights of way that are required as consideration of annexation are the minimum rights of way to be dedicated. Nothing herein is intended to override or substitute for any city code or transportation plan requirements in effect at the time of development of the property as provided in section 4. So go back one more page in your staff review. Actually, 2 more pages in your staff review. And section number 4 says, the owner agrees that all laws, standards, policies, and procedures regarding public improvement in construction that the owner is required to comply with or otherwise meet pursuant to this agreement or city code shall be those in effect when construction is commenced. If the owner fails to comply with applicable laws in the course of constructing improvements, public or otherwise, on the land subject to this agreement, owner consents to the issuance of a stop work order, suspension of issuance of building permits, or denial of certificates of occupancy until such compliance is attained. So because this agreement says that the right-of-way needs to go all the way through to Hutter, they're requesting an amendment to the annexation agreement so that they're following the fact that the transportation plan doesn't have it connecting to Hutter. It's just to clear that up so there isn't confusion in the future.
Can you say that one more time?
The whole thing?
No, the last couple
The reason,
sentences.
okay, the reason for the annexation amendment request is because we wanted to make sure that future folks that wouldn't pull up this annexation agreement and go, hey, wait a minute, how come they didn't give right-of-way all the way to Hutter when this requests it? And we're saying that the transportation plan today that wasn't in place when this was approved, the transportation plan today doesn't show an intersection at Hutter. And so we just need to make sure that future folks realize that they weren't required to dedicate that right away. Should council approve it? If council doesn't approve that amendment, then they'll have to provide for that right of way, even though it'll be unimproved.
Got it.
Okay.
So doesn't the, whatever highway district that will build Hutter, don't they override in the fact that they want as few connections as possible?
So today, under the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, they kind of work together for the whole county, the whole North Idaho area. As far as transportation plans go, recognize Hutter as being a critical corridor. And so they want fewer connections. That's why they're very specific on the Hutter corridor plan where those connections can occur. This isn't one of them, according to that plan. We don't know if Hutter is going to be one of the choices at the end of the day. That the ITD is working through a variety of choices today as far as how they're going to get across the prairie, and that's part of the ambiguity here. So we don't know if it's going to be a local jurisdiction that builds that road section out to our current standard is a 3-lane section, or if it's truly going to be a bypass and it'll be built to a larger section. We just don't know the answers today.
Okay, thank you.
So above and beyond that, all required street improvements shall be in accordance with the current city standard drawings, including ped ramps, sidewalks, stormwater facilities, et cetera. Or did I miss one of those? Oh, transportation impact analysis, of course. Mr. Kimball is correct. They did submit and they did receive comments back. I think that email went to you at like November 1st or end of October, 1st of November. And so they've just gotten those back, and they are in back and forth with our traffic consultant to get better direction on what they're looking for to resubmit. And so that's kind of going back and forth. Once we get that back, that transportation impact analysis will talk about mitigation requirements that they would expect. And so we would bring that forward to City Council to address any kind of a reimbursement agreement that would happen between the city and the applicant at that point in time. We would want it before construction plan submittal, because at construction plan submittal, they're going to want to know what they're required to build and what kind of credits they're going to be able to get.
I was impressed in a gratitude sort of way as I read the traffic impact study, that it wasn't looking at this subdivision in isolation. It was looking at everything that he showed us in concept and everything else. Carrington, it's looking at the whole area, which I think is really important. And so I appreciated that it was looking at the whole picture.
It is important to note that their project needs to stand on its own merits too. So I want to caution everybody as far
Okay.
as we need to look at this as a single project versus, I mean, it does work together, and he has offered that information, but it is a standalone project. So going through the staff review, it talks about the typical sections according to the standards of approval that'll need to get built. Downing Lane is entirely on this piece of property, and so it'll need to be built to its full width. Honeysuckle Avenue is split actually between this property to the north and this property to the south. There's a condition that identifies the fact that should the developer wish to build the whole road instead of half the road now and half the road as part of a future project, same ownership today for both parcels, that they would need to dedicate their right-of-way concurrent with the first final plat. But that's a choice that they can make. Otherwise, they need to build it so that it has a minimum of a 24-foot wide two-way pavement section. I talked about Robeson and the fact that it has a 10-foot path on the north side and a 5-foot sidewalk on the south side. That just recognizes the fact that the north side has fewer access points to it, conflict points with a pathway versus the sidewalk that's in the subdivision side. And that's that connectivity both to the park and to a future school. And all the internal public streets shall be built to that standard local street section. We talked about that one. And Hutter Road. So Hutter Road is a road frontage, but we don't want to build road infrastructure that may get pulled out relatively soon in the future. So we would propose to enter into a deferred a development agreement regarding frontage road. The flip side is how far down in the future do we want to wait before we actually build something? So that's why the condition talks about looking at it for like a 5-year increment that would have them have the opportunity to request an extension. It would identify, what would need to be turned in as part of the construction plan for the first submittal, and Mr. Kimball recognized that it would potentially have some turn bays that would need to be constructed to come into Honeysuckle. That left turn warrant analysis would occur, and mitigation and construction is required, but not necessarily curbs, swales, and sidewalks full length of Hutter Road until some point when we know what that's going to look like when it gets built. So the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District Agency response identified something similar. The secondary access road shall be provided meeting the conditions of the Idaho Fire Code prior to the 31st dwelling unit being constructed. On May 23rd, 2024, Tyler Drexel, who's the Division Chief of Fire Prevention and Fire Marshal of the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District, identified the phasing plans for Northwind subdivision was compliant to provide for a secondary ingress-egress as phasing is completed for the subdivision. What this does mean, however, is that according to the Idaho Fire Code that we've adopted from a building perspective, is that when the 31st building comes in here and looks for a building permit, if the secondary fire access isn't constructed, or a temporary fire access isn't constructed, the city will be unable to issue a building permit because it won't be met at that point in time. So although the roadways, the way they're designed, meets that requirement of providing it in the future, if you're only looking at this piece, and this piece isn't built yet, and this is the only way out, then you have to have another way out, if it's temporary or otherwise, until such time as other development occurs to afford that second way out. Or whether you're going north through Madison, out this way. Okay? All right, number 4. Geohazard shall be reviewed during construction plan review. No parcel shall have access, primary or secondary, to Robeson Avenue or to Honeysuckle Avenue or to Hutter Road. Mailbox location shall be on internal public streets. The property is zoned single-family residential R1 as defined in Hayden City Code. Basically, it's a classic Hayden neighborhood where single-family homes on smaller lots are permitted. You can have accessory dwelling units as long as you can meet the design standards. And two-family dwellings, meaning duplexes, are not allowed. And the annexation agreement limited the number of dwelling units to 4 dwelling units per acre or no more than 156 dwelling units. They're proposing 88 lots.
Donna, with the annexation agreement, would this subdivision qualify to have ADUs where they will have already hit their, or would they have hit their 4 dwellings per acre? Because he said something about it being 2.15 dwellings per acre. Did I
it says,
misunderstand?
according to Idaho State Code,
Uh-huh.
accessory dwelling units are allowed as long as they meet design standards anywhere you allow a single-family residence. So if they have 88 dwelling units, they can't have an accessory dwelling unit on every single lot because they would have more than their maximum allowed by their annexation agreement.
That's what I was asking, is how those two things marry together.
Oh, that's just another one of those. I always put the setbacks in, talking about single-family R1. The front setbacks and rear setbacks are the same, 25 feet and 25 feet. Side yards are 10 feet and 15 feet from flanking streets. You have a 35-foot tall maximum height of single-family residential. You can have a 45% lot coverage. That's all your footprints of your buildings. That's what your lot coverage is. You have to have a minimum of 20 feet of street frontage. Your minimum lot size is 8,250 square feet. And so yes, ADUs are allowed. And accessory structures have a further setback as they're generally behind the front of the primary structure. They can have a 5-foot setback, side and rear, and a 15-foot flanking street, and they can be 20 feet tall. If you put an accessory dwelling unit in the second story of a accessory shop, then they can be up to 35 feet tall, but they have to have side yard setbacks, side and rear yard setbacks of a minimum of 10 feet.
Okay.
So there is some changes as far as that goes. Design standards. The other thing to keep in mind with a design standard, since you brought up accessory dwelling units, is they have fire access requirements, they have lot coverage requirements, and they have access into the structure requirements. So they have their own set of access standards.
Okay.
So we had goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. They began on page 13 of your staff analysis. I'm not going to read them all. So it's goals 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 18, and 19. Talks mostly about ensuring a variety of housing stock and preserving and protecting and strengthening the vitality of stability of existing neighborhoods, adequately siting public facilities, bike ped connectivity, coordinating the timely and efficient, environmentally sound water and sewer and other utility infrastructure, and enhancing non-motorized connectivity. And then policies were 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 13, 14, 16, 18, and 22, and they pretty much mirror those that you found in the goals. The city should evaluate community-wide impacts from development, identifying their needs for public facilities, services, circulation, housing, and effect density resources, improving pedestrian, bicycle, and vehicular connectivity, supporting and encouraging recreational activities. Growth should be accompanied by the development of infrastructure, public services, utilities, preservation of open space, rec facilities, and again, ensuring those levels of service and minimizing financial and operational impacts. And then standard number 8, again, addresses, your on-site and your off-site improvement shall be required of the developer. Extension of infrastructure as per adopted city code standards and plans, and mitigating improvements is required. So there are requirements identified in Post Falls Highway District's letter in the back with the agency comments. The Coeur d'Alene School District has a participant in the Memorandum of Understanding for the sewer lift station, and their requirements that may come with that. Again, that agreement is totally a private agreement. The city is not a party of that agreement. However, when the lift station gets constructed, the city will require a deed. What's the word I want? Okay, unencumbered, that's the word. An unencumbered piece of land that the lift station sits upon, and a permanent ingress, egress to that lift station. It might be through right-of-way, through a street, and it might be through an easement. Because again, as Mr. Kimball noted, they are currently under review to get their master plan. I'm hoping for results like tomorrow back for the master plan, and that will help them figure out where that's actually going to need to sit for the lift station. And once they figure out where the lift station is really going to go on the school district property, they'll figure out the access to it. And then the transportation impact analysis mitigation requirements are to be determined because they're still under review. So then noticing, agency notices were sent out to 25 agencies. And of those public agencies, those that responded were in your packets under the agency comments. You received quite a few of them. The Coeur d'Alene Airport requested an navigation easement. The Idaho Fish and Game did not have any comments to submit. Panhandle Health District requires an application for every subdivision that comes through, and they do a review of that as well. So they're expecting that to be submitted. Idaho Department of Water Resources. They had really interesting comments. That came in your packet. And it was interesting because I sent their comments to the water purveyor. So the interesting information here is that they were trying to figure out, they said that they had 3 wells that were located in the same quarter. But according to the water jurisdiction, they found 1. And so they were going to try to get with Idaho Department of Water Resources. Brandon was trying to work with Idaho Department of Water Resources and figure out who was on first with the water well site conversation. And Idaho Department of Water Resources just asked that they do that. So it was a really good opening to connect the two to get their mapping lined up. So that was helpful. Idaho Department of Environmental Quality provided good comments, and I always kind of summarize their comments in the staff analysis, but in their comments, they always list a plethora of resources for the engineer or the owner of projects to talk to. So they have somebody from engineering and wastewater. They have somebody to talk to regarding the drinking water, air quality, remediation, and then surface water and setback requirements. And that's always in their responses. What isn't always in their responses is the first part of this paragraph, which I thought was important. It says, "Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the application materials for the Northwind subdivision. DEQ appreciates the planning work that has been completed to ensure that water and sewer system capacity needs are met in order to provide safe drinking water and safe wastewater conveyance for the proposed project and surrounding area of the community. Engineering plans and specifications for water and sewer main upgrades and extensions associated with the project will require review," and then they go on to their normal language. That first few sentences, that's very brand new for this particular subdivision. It's distinct. North Lakes Fire Protection District, we talked about those as far as the 31st dwelling. So yes, the plat looks like it'll work, and he has other comments related to fire hydrants and storage adapters and how that works with the water district. Comments related to building permits, and then meeting the current edition of the Idaho Fire Code.
So can I ask, so does that mean that that second access has to be planned or constructed?
It has to be planned.
Okay.
And then it has to have, at a minimum, a temporary access all the way to a public or private road that gets them out for
Okay.
safety purposes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
The Kootenai County Sheriff's letter is also in your packet. And they provide a great deal of information in their responses. And I kind of quoted the first portion that talks about that they've reviewed the request and it does not see, they don't see any immediate impact that would prevent it from being approved. That's kind of where I started. And then the letter goes on to talk about the sheriff's office can provide law enforcement and what that ration of law enforcement is. It then talks about the ratio, doesn't cover the additional resources that might be needed for this project. And additionally, an increase in population will also inevitably cause an increase in crime, and goes on to talk about the jail. And then also a final area to consider is the increased congestion with traffic from the development proposed in the surrounding surface streets and public response time. This letter was written in March of 2024. And so it's important to note the changes that we have seen in the increase of Kootenai County Sheriff's Patrol officers for the city of Hayden specifically. The location of the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office has changed from their office on Government Way to out off of Dakota Avenue. So things have changed since this letter was written, and yes, the jail is important, but they're figuring out mechanisms to fund that. So the statistics in here, definitely valid. Just some changes since March that might affect that letter.
So we have provisions for, new developments to pay impact fees for traffic and parks. Do we have any provisions for, they just simply added that many more people? And there are other things such as law enforcement that are
City of-
affected?
The city of Hayden doesn't charge an impact fee for law enforcement at this point in time. And
Okay.
they, as of, there are processes that are being worked through to potentially bring forward possibly a request for the city to collect impact fees related to that, but that request has not been made to the city at this point.
Right, so it would not impact this subdivision at all?
If, I can't say what will happen at the time of a building permit
Okay.
issuance. That's at the time of building permit.
Okay, fair, thank you.
Harbs added language to be included on the final plat in regarding odors for that. And then Post Falls Highway District requested a road development agreement be entered into concerning improvements to the Post Falls Highway District infrastructure. Both Coeur d'Alene's, both school districts have been notified about this particular project, and the city hasn't received responses from either one. Regarding agency comments. There were no public comments received prior to the public hearing. And then the staff recommended conditions of approval start on page 16 of your staff analysis. I'm not going to read all of them, they're like several. We have the general conditions of approval, those talk about dedications and easements, and those being part of the final plat. We talk about permits from outside agencies, Coeur d'Alene Airport, the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board, Hayden Lake Irrigation District, IDEQ, Idaho Department of Water Resources, Northern Lakes Fire Protection District, Panhandle Health District, Post Falls Highway District. Those are the ones that have been mentioned in the staff analysis. The approvals run with the land. A phasing plan shall be required submittal of the construction plans for the first phase of the subdivision. And most of the time what you guys see is the map up there with lines drawn on it that show the blue lines. What we're looking for a phasing plan is what portions of the construction of infrastructure need to be built with each phase in order for it to be able to stand on its own and work. So that's what we're looking for. Condition number 5 talks all about that H8 sewer basin infrastructure conditions of approval. It talked about what needed to happen before the first final plat of the subdivision, because those building permits would need someplace to flow. And then we talked about what needed to happen prior to the construction improvement agreement, the fact that we actually need an easement on the Coeur d'Alene School District property to construct the lift station. And then that deed that over to the city upon completion. That lift station cannot be built in future right-of-way. It actually has to be built on land that's not encumbered. And then that permanent ingress egress to the lift station needs to be addressed. Condition number 6 talks about that sewer technical analysis that's nearing completion and getting it so that we can get the correct sizing for the H8 sewer basin infrastructure. Completion of the revisions to the TIA and the TIA peer review, and then getting that transportation infrastructure agreement in front of City Council for everybody to know who's doing what. And then condition number 8, that all lots shall be accessed from only the internal roads, so that's no access onto Honeysuckle, Hutter, or Robeson. No more than one access per proposed residential lot may be allowed on Downing Lane. And then construction plan requirements. The construction plan shall show the typical sections for Downing Lane and for Honeysuckle. When it comes to Honeysuckle, that's where that easement from Coeur d'Alene School District shall be required for the proposed permanent ingress to the lift station. It might land on Downing, but we think it's going to land on Honeysuckle. Honeysuckle Avenue impacts the property to the south. That's where I said that if they decide to build the whole road, then they would need to dedicate the right-of-way concurrent with the first final plat. Honeysuckle Avenue is their one way out at the moment, their first way out. And so they're going to need to build it all the way to Hutter, like Mr. Kimball's drawing showed, versus the one that was in the staff analysis. If they decide not to build the south half onto the other piece of property, they have to provide for 24 feet of paved width, the curbs, the swales, and the sidewalks on the north side, at a minimum. And then Robeson Avenue shall be built to the typical section. The important note about Robeson, not just that it has the 10-foot path on the north and the 5-foot path on the south, but it is also a no parking shall be placed on both sides of the road street, both because of its narrower typical section. And then the point about whether to amend the annexation agreement to recognize that Robeson is not planned to connect to Hutter.
Is there a reason why Robeson is being built narrower?
It was a request. It's allowed in our standard typical drawings to have that in this particular location.
Okay. But there are no driveways.
No, there are no
Directly onto
driveways
it either.
directly onto it. So the internal streets shall be built to the standard 68-foot width, and the erosion control measures shall be put in at time of construction plan review. The developer shall use the Hayden sanitary sewer system in accordance with the 2020 sewer master plan, and then they'll need to provide concurrence with the U.S. Postal Service regarding mailbox locations. Landscape plans are detailed in your staff analysis for when they occur on individual lots, whether they're in street frontage, they're part of greenways, or they're part of the multimodal pathway areas. There are specific requirements, and the timing of when those get constructed is also based on where they're at. And those are in detail in your staff analysis. It is important to note that all disturbed areas shall be stabilized with dryland grass or an approved BMP, and that's because once you disturb the prairie, if you don't put something over the top of it, it tends to blow away, mostly in the northeasterly direction, but it's good to keep that all kind of nailed down. The developer shall enter into a Hutter Road Deferred Infrastructure Development Agreement and into a Transportation Impact Analysis Agreement.
I have a question about 11. So is that something that is handled with a bond in case the developer fails in some way?
It'll be discussed with our legal counsel and the city council as far as what the terms of that agreement will look like.
Okay. Thank you.
And then requirements requested by other agencies. The developer to comply with the Northern Lakes Fire Protection District of October 18th, 2024. The developer shall comply with requirements from the Post Falls Highway District letter of April of 2024. That navigation easement will need to be recorded. That was recorded in April of 22 shall be referenced on the plat. The developer is requested to record an easement that's acceptable to the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board and then reference it on the plat. And then Hayden Lake Irrigation District requested that any water lines that run cross-country have an easement as well and referenced on the plat. So then there are sample motions for the council, for the commission, and I stand for questions.
Anybody?
I have a question. Looking at North Winds as its own entity, is part of the understanding that North Winds park requirement is going to be fulfilled by the Battleground Park?
Correct. The park that is in what is proposed to be the Battleground subdivision is a location of a community park in the park's master plan. And so the park impact fees that are paid for the lots that are within the North Winds subdivision will go toward park improvements of that area.
A follow-up question is, if there is, for whatever reason, some sort of issue or delay with the Battleground development, getting kicked off or moving forward, as we saw, you know, how that can happen.
Can.
Potential for a park to be on hold indefinitely for North Winds, if it were to get approved and fast-tracked and move forward, that's a possibility, right? Just depending on
It's all about timing, yeah.
construction of all that. Okay. Is there a requirement for them, for North Winds to have a backup area, like to develop the,
There isn't.
okay.
Good question.
John, do you have any questions? Okay. Okay. Oh, Sean, any questions?
Nope, not this time.
Thank you.
Which slide would you like me to leave up for the public? We have enough public here. I'm assuming somebody out there wants to comment.
We have at least one.
If you want to give them the direction on how to comment.
will.
Okay?
Should we do the one that has the map of it?
That one?
Yeah.
That works. Thanks. Yeah,
I'm gonna go back this other one.
I was gonna give us a 5-minute between now and the public. Is that okay?
Is that okay to leave this one up instead?
But tell them how to fill out the paperwork first.
Okay. All right, so, anyone who wants to offer comments regarding the subject case, please submit a completed form located on the table by the entrance doors. The form must have your name, address, and date, and whether you want to testify in support of, opposed to, or are neutral. Anyone planning to speak must do so at the podium so that your remarks can be heard in the recording system. All questions and comments will be directed to the commission, not the applicant. The applicant will have the opportunity to answer questions and offer a rebuttal after all public testimony is completed. All speakers will need to state their name and address for the record before they begin speaking. And I will first call on those in support of the application, then those uncommitted, and then finally those who are opposed to the application. Please note that the commission is not here to answer questions, only to hear your comments. But we're going to take a 5-minute before we start the public comment.
Effort's really great.
Okay, all right, okay, we'll go ahead and start again. I read this one here. No, I read this whole thing. I've already read this whole thing, yeah. Okay, so, we have two comments that would like, two individuals that would like to come up. They are both against, so, per resolution 2017-4, public comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person. And we'll go ahead and let, Stephanie Frittis come up first, please. And she is against.
My name is Stephanie Fritz. I am a landowner of 9187 North Hutter Road, which in proximity, that puts me directly across from the property in motion. What was that?
Where you pointed to.
Yeah, so that's being petitioned here, and I will start with, I am 11 years late to the party. I was not here for the annexation of that property being put into the city of Hayden. I've lived on my property for 25 years, and it's been county property, and when I moved in there, they're 5-acre parcels, and the ones across the street were also zoned for 5-acre parcels, and we were told that the aquifer and the entire prairie basically depended on those land items remaining at those 5-acre parcels. I have 9 acres. I am unable to split my acreage directly across the street from this same land, and that is concerning to me that we're allowing land in the same area, same exact land, the land north of me, the land south of me, is all zoned the same as my land is. And that land being zoned for so many houses is quite concerning on a lot of levels for that. I will say the development and, what was proposed today is for a housing development. I mean, it looks wonderful, but that's not what that land was designed for originally, and I don't see going forward how that's going to benefit that area. Honeysuckle right now does not go through to Hutter. We have a traffic disaster on Hutter, as mentioned before, that is already pretty terrible. Highway 41 is a better option for a bypass regardless, so I'm in hopes that the Hutter bypass does not go through, to be quite honest, but if Hutter gets punched through if Honeysuckle gets punched all the way through to Hutter, that is going to immediately impact Hutter in a major way. That's going to put a lot of traffic driving right in front of my house where it's already an issue for traffic in that area. It would make a very high impact as far as my land and my property and crime, everything going forward as far as that. That's putting, 88 homes, that's 400 more people in the general area, directly onto a road that's not designed right now to handle that. I don't really have any more to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Matt Fritz? You could state your name and your address as you begin.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm Matt Fritz. I live also at 9187 North Hutter Road, which is right here, obviously. And my main thing, like my wife said, is the traffic. Regardless of what anyone says, we live there and we've seen what's been going on. I don't know how many accidents that we see on Hayden and Hutter there. At least over 100, I'd say, in the last, probably 4 years, including one that went into our yard this last spring, a rollover into my yard, which we have children. So if my son was out there playing soccer like he does all the time, potential of getting hit by vehicles. And then I don't know how many people have gotten severely injured or died on that intersection at Hutter and Hayden. I specifically saw one last year. And then 2 years ago, my neighbor had one as well. Ran into her telephone pole, ran through her fence. I mean, I got videos of all this stuff. So like I have, you know, I got it for sure. So that's my main concern is the traffic big time, because I know people will access right through here, guarantee it. It's the straight shot to Hayden. So I don't know what we could do about putting a stoplight or a roundabout, or I know that's probably not part of this position, but it really is a really big safety concern of mine. So, especially with our kids that like to play outside. So that's my main thing. That's what I gotta say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comment. And then we have one more, Diana Clemens. If you would also state your name and address, please.
Is it all right if I bring my son?
Of course, of course.
My name is Diana Clemens, and I live at 4929 West Orchard Avenue on the corner of Hutter and Orchard. This affects where we live. We are in a subdivision with really strict covenants, and we can't subdivide. I have a 10-acre parcel. I can divide it in half, but I can't do any more because of the aquifer, and also we are zoned ag. In the square mile between me and Highway 41, there are 6 professional horse facilities, and there is a lot of horse traffic out there. I'm the program director for Harmony Ranch Therapeutic Riding Center. I work with disabled kids using horses. And I was here in 2013 when the proposal was a big sports complex and restaurants. And I was opposed to it at that time as well. When you move out to agricultural areas, you don't want the city to come with you. And it is kind of difficult because we're not a city. We're the agriculture of Rathdrum, and right across the street from me is zoned commercial. And so it is quite odd out there, but we have watched the mess. They have made a really big mess of that whole area, right where they want to put the houses, and then also that square below. This is my horse ranch. And so these 2 areas, they have gone in and siphoned off the topsoil and taken it away. They have torn that property up. It's got hills. They've pulled the gravel out. They've done lots of things with the soil that I don't even think they're supposed to be doing. But it has been an eyesore for 10 years. And so, besides the fact that we have agriculture and horses and animals and kids, the crime rate does go up when you have subdivisions. And I am concerned that kids are going to get into the horses and kids are going to get into my barn. I work with a lot of disabled adults. I used to have a program with juvenile probation and the juvenile diversion program, juvenile mental health. And so I have a lot of kids on my property quite often. And so I think that to retain the character of having a horse ranch and working outside of city limits with a lot of kids, it's going to be really difficult, a difficult sell when the property on the other side of the street is pretty well torn up. And I do apologize for being late, but I had a horse get loose. So I feel like I came a little bit late to the party and don't perhaps have all the information. But we actually on our side of Hutter have lost quite a bit of property to the easement. And we're not sure Nobody has told us what's happening with Hutter Bypass. I don't know if that was brought up at all. But then on the other side of the road, adding a bunch of houses, and the traffic out there is absolutely horrendous. There are times when the traffic backs up all the way from Hayden Avenue past my property in front of the Fritz's. And so it is not a good area. There are accidents all the time. It is a very dangerous intersection. And so adding more congestion, thank you, adding more congestion and more cars out there, I think would be very difficult. And so I just would like to go on record saying we do not want to stop having ag in that area. And I am vehemently opposed to a subdivision with that many houses. So, thank you for listening.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have anyone else? Going to do another thing? No.
She still has a couple minutes left.
Okay. She says you still have a minute or two.
I guess it's somewhat of a question, but we're zoned for the Rathdrum School District, where I am, directly across the street. So we were mentioning a lot of the Coeur d'Alene School District. I am south of Orchard, and I am in the Rathdrum School District. We're in the Lakeland School District. So are are those houses zoned for the Lakeland School District? They are south of Orchard Avenue. So, I mean, I can understand where, we're talking about the Coeur d'Alene School District, but are those houses going to be zoned for the Rathdrum School District, the Lakeland School District, not the Coeur d'Alene School District, and that would impact them, not Coeur d'Alene. That's it. So.
Appreciate that, thanks. Okay, if there's no other comments, we'll close our public hearing. Oh, yeah. Thanks for keeping me on my toes.
No problem. Thank you. Ray Kimball again for the record. I had a couple of things that I'll talk about with regard to staff, but I'll state the staff report and Donna's presentation. She did, as always, a fantastic job. But really quick, I'll jump into a couple of public comments. I will address some of them. It's probably important to note that they're not necessarily responsive to a standard of approval, but it is important to address them and make sure that they know that they are heard. With regards to the proximity of the houses to the therapeutic riding center, and what a fantastic service to the community. It is important to remember that there's an over 200-foot buffer from the back of all those houses provided by, and I'm just going to jump into my PowerPoint here. So there is that 200-foot buffer right here in this location that's been reserved for the Hutter bypass. That provides quite a distance of space for that. With regards to the 5-acre parcels, and this is something that the public may or may not know, but the reason they're limited to 5-acre parcels in rural Kootenai County over the aquifer is to limit the amount of septic systems and drain fields so that it doesn't pollute the aquifer. And that limitation exists for that very important reason, and you're only allowed to go smaller than that when you have municipal sewer system, which is what we're providing, which is an important distinction between the two. And lastly, when it comes to traffic, traffic is always one of those things that hits hard, and especially on Hutter and Hayden, to be precise in this regard. And I think it's really important to remember that we're bringing a solution to the party. We're bringing the ability to fix the problems and not just add to them. And so it's a really important thing to remember. When I jump into Donna's staff report, there were a couple of things that I wanted to hit on. I did not read her condition with regards to Robeson as well as I should have. And her condition mentions that the pathway would be on the north side and the sidewalk on the south. And we have this nice block-in buffer on the south side, so we'd like it if you would switch the pathway to the south side so it can go through the block-in buffer and not be crammed up against the back of lots on the subdivision to the north, which would be up here. So we think the south side would be a much better spot for the pathway, and it's on the same side of the road as the park. So we would ask that you adjust the condition to swap the sides of the street. With regards to public safety, I will point out, I think it's really, really important to point out that the sheriff did say that this request he does not see an immediate impact that would prevent it from being approved. There are future impacts. This is a growing area. It's been growing for my entire life that I've been here. So for the last 40 some years, 45 plus years, it's been a growing vicinity and a growing community, and it does have impacts. I certainly hope that the sheriff's department can figure out a way to figure out some sort of a impact fee and to make sure that everything is mitigated. I know the city of Post Falls has a public safety impact fee. There are others out there at the fire departments, and I believe, or so Kootenai Fire has an impact fee, and I believe the ambulance service also does, the EMS does as well. That is implemented, and I think there's some opportunities there. That's not really here for discussion tonight, but I do support that. With regards to Idaho Department of Water Resources and the wells, we're not aware of any well on the site exactly. So the IDWR and their mapping has got some well drillers reports from back in the day sometimes weren't super accurate when the guys were out there describing where the wells were. There are no wells on the site to our knowledge, and the water rights will be transferred to Hayden Lake Irrigation District per our agreement with them. Now with regards to Robeson and the fire department, and making sure that, as Donna said, we can stand on our own. There are two important things to remember. One is that in this location right here, this street dedication all the way to the end of pavement right here, and the right-of-way dedication has already occurred. So there is a public right-of-way that is 40 plus feet wide from this location to this location that exists today and is available for us to use for a fire apparatus road, should that be necessary at the time. We also have the ability to reserve an easement, a temporary easement across this lot here at the north end, and extend Robeson out to Hutter to be a temporary fire access road on that route as well. We can sacrifice a lot for a certain period of time until the other roads in the area are built. And then once the other access through, let's just say Madison Ranch or Robeson to the east is constructed, then we get our second access and the 31, we can go on beyond the 31. Does that make sense? So the point is that not only do we have one option, but we have more than one option for getting past those 31 units and making sure that we have fire code compliance, and that's incredibly important. And I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out for the record. And I think that's it for me, unless you have any other questions.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for him?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
What were the improvements to the road that you were speaking of, to Atlas, I'm sorry, to Hutter, coming out of the neighborhood there?
Okay, so the improvements, I'm gonna jump to a little bit different slide. Well, this will probably work. So the improvements at Honeysuckle Bean Harvest, or whatever we want to call it, and Hutter are going to include a left turn bay. So it'll be a southbound left turn bay, which will essentially end up being both a left turn bay, northbound and southbound, because of the way they widen out and they taper back. So when you do one on one direction, it pretty much lends itself to doing one on the other direction as well. So it'll be a northbound left turn bay as well in that location. And hopefully that helps alleviate at least some of the issues by giving refuge to northbound left turners. So people who live on Harvest to the west can get out of the path of travel into that left-hand turn lane, get their blinker on, and turn left. Other intersection improvements that I spoke about earlier would be a signalization of Hutter and Hayden. And we spoke to that. That's spoken to in the traffic impact analysis. And Ms. Howard, I am amazed that you actually read that thing. To your credit, it's very technical, but it does speak to that it is failing today. And without any development, it is just going to get worse. I mean, in the no development situation, it gets worse and worse and worse. The important thing to remember is that, like I said earlier, we're coming to the table with solutions. We have some options and some ability. It's going to take some cooperation with the city, but I think that together we can make things happen, and we can have solutions instead of just being upset about the issues. So we've got that's our plan. I mean, it's better to come up with solutions. My philosophy has always been, just fix it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We can do it. We're solution-based people.
Is there a ballpark time frame on putting a light or something at Hayden and Hutter?
So, but I mean, we got to get it done. So it's just a matter of, there's just timing going on. So we'll figure that out with staff. We'll figure out what the appropriate solution is. We'll get together with the other developers, make sure we got all the funding mechanisms in place, and we'll get it knocked out.
Thank you.
Any other questions for him? No? Okay, thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, so the hearing is now closed. No further questions or comments will be allowed from the public. Commission, do you wish to proceed or schedule deliberations for another date?
I say we proceed.
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 Thank you, Sean.
I keep forgetting it's there.
Okay, so as we deliberate, it's important that we look to the standards of approval and why you feel the way you do. So, Sean, you want to start us off?
Sure.
Okay.
I think it's similar that we're getting some of the improvements done prior to the impact fees coming in with the credit here. So I think that's good to address some of these traffic issues that we've seen. I believe the applicant has met the standards of approval, and again, we're seeing less density there than if they came in under the current zoning standards based on their annexation agreement. So I think that is a plus, and a little bit less density than what could possibly be there in future development. I think they have met the standards of approval.
Thank you, Sean. Keith?
Sean, he literally took the wind out of my sails. So I'm a big proponent for slowing growth, and, you know, as much as a city can, but, having said that, I'm also one that is for property owners' rights, and, to tell somebody they can't develop their land that they bought with the intent to improve, there's a balance point between those two things. And, you know, we're growing, that's it. There's nothing that's gonna change that. Sadly, we're experiencing, a lot of, traffic problems due to, litigation expenses in the past that robbed our budgets of, keeping up with managing traffic. And, the only way that we get out of, bad traffic is by having impact fees be collected, by properties being developed. And this is how we get that money to put in the traffic lights that save lives. It's also, a responsible way for us to preserve our aquifer, because the sewer, needs of a community, it can't just be septic systems. It has to be treated so that water is clean before it's, you know, sent downstream, so to speak. And so, I think this is a positive for us. I think they could have asked for a lot more, units in density, and it's actually fewer, but it also is giving us some solutions, that the community, you know, really does need. So I think it's been done in a responsible way. I think it not only meets the code that's in place, but I think they exceeded it, and yeah.
Okay, thank you, Keith. David?
Yeah, echoing what Keith said, I think, you know, anytime you zoom in, you realize that there are people that are affected. And it's unfortunate, you know, the way that we're looking at an area that butts up to large agriculture type homes, and, you know, it's, so I understand the frustration and what kind of impact happens from a development, coming next door, so to speak. But looking at the standards, that they have been met, and like what Keith said, some of the things that I think are huge bonuses are the way that, the school is gonna be boosted by the developer, the safety with, the traffic being handled properly so that, accidents are minimized. And I mentioned that community park, because it was, I personally know some people who live in the area north, of Hayden, and they don't have a large park like that, so that's gonna serve a lot of people in the area, a lot of kids, having a place where they can go. So in light of how it could be much more densely built or developed, I think, there is a lot of good that's gonna come out of the inevitable growth, so.
Thank you. Jill?
I like the safety of the neighborhood being only at 55%-ish density of what they could be at. And then also with the developers working together for the sewer basin, the road structure, and I do completely see how the neighborhood could stand alone, and I appreciate that you'd be willing to sacrifice a lot for a second egress or fire access. But, I think the neighborhood's very kind of cookie cutter for the Hayden suburban neighborhood characteristics. But, I like that the roads are being worked on together and that the plan is kind of put together with the other developers and everything. The lower density, I do believe, will also help affect the possibility of crime rate in the future. So I'm thankful for having that lower density, and then the park as well will be a great benefit, and the greenways and everything. But also I like the buffer of the where you guys have that 8 acres where the Hutter bypass could be. Having that buffer, I think, would also help reduce noise and put some sort of like a sense of separation between ag land and the residential land. So I think they meet standards of approval for safety and other things.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I come from experience where developers automatically left a lot for schools and whatnot. And so I especially appreciate that this group of developers in this general area are working together for the benefit of Coeur d'Alene schools. And so I think that's an important part that benefits the community as a whole. I also appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking on mitigating cost to ensure that the developers pay their adequate share of the cost, that development does what they can to pay for growth. And especially in an area such as traffic mitigation. And let's see, I had another note. Also, I appreciate, as you guys have mentioned, the larger lots, that I think that the residents of Hayden that live here, as well as those coming, appreciate those larger lots. And again, like you've said, Keith, that the sewer system actually protects the aquifer. So I also believe that all of the standards of approval have been met. Appreciating the comments, being sensitive to the comments that have been made. We understand that, but we also understand property rights and feel like these developers have made an effort to be responsible in their growth and development. I would entertain a motion to approve, a motion to continue, or a motion to deny, noting that these are recommendations. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Not straight up approvals. They are recommendations to City Council.
Can we make a motion, but then add the change that?
Well, I actually think, yeah, how would we handle that as far as the requirements
on the
from
south side.
staff? And how do you feel about that being changed? Can we word it so that it gives you the freedom to negotiate that rather than us straight up?
Because I was thinking the greenway that he was mentioning.
Yeah,
Just
go ahead,
in the motion,
go ahead and make your motion.
Can you go back to the motions again?
but, yep.
Just make sure you include the staff recommendations.
All right, I motion to approve PZE-24-0014 North Wednesday subdivision request with staff recommended conditions of approval, finding that it is in accord with the standards of Hayden City Code based on testimony received at the Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing and the record of the request. And,
With the exception?
with the exception or
Yeah,
with
is
the
that how
change?
you, oh,
With
yeah,
the, with the change?
okay.
With the change requested by Whipple, what was it, develop,
For the greenway to be on the.
for the
south
Greenway to be on the south side of
Path.
Robeson, right?
Path.
Versus the north.
Versus the north.
Path. Greenway path. Yeah,
Sorry.
greenway and path. Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second.
Commissioner Erickson,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Howard,
Yes.
Chair Taylor,
Yes.
Okay. Motion, recommendation carries. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. We have unfinished business. 2024 Hayden Lights Parade participation. We tabled this from the last meeting so that we could have a discussion when more of us were present. Is there any feelings, any burning desire to participate in the parade?
No, not at all.
I'm gonna be out of town, so
You'll be out of town, okay,
I would say no for me.
okay.
What's the dates?
It is the
December 7th,
December 7th.
Saturday, December 7th. Sean, you weren't here for the last meeting, but we were approached by the city clerk, for a possible float or a car entry, for the Planning and Zoning Commission to participate in the, Hayden Lights Parade on December 7th. Just FYI, that's what this discussion is, if you guys
Okay.
are going to participate or
Thank you for
not.
That is a tough weekend for me with, my worst Christmas parties.
Okay. Keith, Joel?
I'll most likely be at work.
Okay,
My plate is so full.
I understand, and I am not doing this by myself. I actually reached out to my son-in-law who has a fire engine.
Oh, yeah.
That would be fun if he came, and then my grandkids could, except that there's Santa Express
Oh, yeah.
where he lives, and so there's a conflict, so I can't get the fire truck.
You could just ride a motorcycle by yourself.
I don't ride a motorcycle outside of a parade, it's not gonna happen in a parade.
You can ask our present deputy if she'd give you a ride.
Yeah, she doesn't wanna do a second one. Mr. Jones, did you wanna jump on that? You wanna be in the parade?
It's tempting, but I also probably think it'd be unwise for me to ride a motorcycle or get anywhere near one.
Me too.
So then we do need a motion, this is an action item, so
Your motion,
I motion that we do not have a float in the parade or be involved in the parade
okay,
This year.
this year, yeah.
and a second for the motion?
I second that.
Okay.
all right, Commissioner Erickson,
That would be aye.
yep,
Yeah.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Vice Chair Howard,
Aye.
and Chair Taylor.
Aye.
All right,
Good effort, though,
good.
at some point. So, do we have any reports?
Just a couple.
Okay.
So the first one is that the 2025 meeting calendar is on the first and third Mondays unless there's a holiday. If there's a holiday, we've just bumped those down to the next available Monday. So we pretty much have two meetings,
a month, all year. 'cause
Why do we have
So-
April looking like that? April's is a
So that's
Not on the
actually
7th.
March 31st.
It's a ghost day.
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be the 7th, April 7th.
Okay,
It just isn't colored on the right square.
okay, okay.
Good catch. We'll fix that. So you guys weren't planning on, and then also the meeting time shows 5 o'clock, and that'll get fixed to 5:30 as well.
Okay.
As long as that's
It
still
does
working
work
well.
better.
Yeah, I think so too. So then the other piece that the city council is requesting, from the clerk's office, and we'll have this in Mary's vice chair, in the vice chair's book and in the chair's book. We elect new chairs and vice chairs in January, so if you're thinking about swapping things around, just be aware. But they are requesting that we do written reports to the council as far as how the commission is doing as a whole and what's new and what's happening. 4 times quarterly, 4 times a year. And then also they're requiring or requesting the chair to be in person and presenting some kind of a synopsis of what's going on. And for next year, it looks like May 27th is the day and November 25th are the day for planning and zoning to be at a city council meeting presenting.
May 27th and November what day?
And November 25th.
I see it. Okay.
So that's just a change in how we kind of have had relations with the council, at least from this group before. I don't think we've ever quite done that. Other commissions always have done quarterly reports to the council. That's not unusual, but.
So how would we do that, where we don't necessarily know what things are coming?
I'm not certain. We're
And
gonna have to.
anything that we've seen, they've also seen.
Right. So it's just kind of this is what we've been doing at the commission level. So as an example, you guys have done several workshops on code amendments that haven't been in front of council yet, in all
Okay.
honesty. So that might be something you'd talk about, or, I don't know. We'll have to just
Additional use
hit it as they go. Just kind of tell them what you've been doing at the commission level and go from there.
Okay.
All right, that's all I had. Oh, I did allude to the fact Battleground did get heard at a public meeting. You guys are free to watch the YouTube video of that. It was tabled until the first meeting in December. They are having an executive meeting on, someplace at the next meeting. I think it's at the end of the next meeting. And then they're gonna go through deliberations on the 10th and make a decision. So
Okay.
I don't know what their answer is gonna be. It could be deliberated back to planning and zoning, so please remember that this is a process that is ongoing. And so until it's finished, you guys need to remain, it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that they left things so, in a place where it could definitely come back to us.
So any process, whether it's this one or any other process that goes through the planning and zoning, just because you've made your decision and your recommendation to city council, until that process is completed, all the way through, final plat in some cases, you just can't be talking about it outside of this
Understood.
realm, so.
Yeah,
It's
not a
going on
problem.
like a crazy
Felt a little
speed
like
here.
deja vu.
Okay.
All right, that's about all I had.
I motion to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're done.
Hey.
That was, thanks, Zach.